We are finished. What's up, dudes? It's Wednesday. Let's get some colouring done. And as always, guys, this is the drawing of the week. My name's Blut084, BLUT084, Art and Games. I'm here every single day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, but every day and night over on Instagram. If you want to leave me a comment in today's live stream, leave it in the comment section down below. If you're watching back, scroll all the way to the bottom and leave one right there. I know some of you guys have been tuning afterwards, so if you are, thank you very much and welcome to the stream. Today we're going to be colouring in what we inked and sketched over this week. On Monday we did the sketch, so if you didn't check that one out, guys, definitely I'll show you how to do all the different body form. And this was our reference picture. And I've had a go with my new Copic colours, which are here. They are absolutely brilliant. They're the cheapest versions that you can find because the Copic markers at the moment, they're very expensive. But I try to find myself like a cheap manner because I like to get more than just one set of pens. And I always try and add to my collection of different assorted things to use when I'm drawing and inking. These have been used in the last episode, guys, so if you want to see what I use in this pack, then check out many of the other videos, but it's always in the sketching stage, as that's my sketching stage bit, whatever. And then we move into these, where these will go to a bit more of a fine line, 2 shades, 2 sides, but a lot of them have been running out. So I went and got myself a set of fat chunky ones. Oh, they're absolutely brilliant. What I noticed is some of the colors will run out really quickly if you go really fast, so they're a saturating type pen, very, 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 very similar to a Copic marker pen. I think it's the same ink, it's just on a poorer version of it. But it makes this, guys, you can put in shading, you can put in different colors and different colors to each other and go over them without bleeding into each other. So that's really, really good. So you can sort of add a little bit of shading and other tones to each other so they don't bleed. As you can see there, I've done it on the gauntlets and things like that. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to say there. Even towards the outside of it, I used 3 different pens there. So that's what we're going to be doing today, where I'm going to be showing you how to put in different shades, different tones, all by using these cheap shit pens. But they're not shit, they are just cheap. I went to my local, not dollar store, I wouldn't ever go and get pens for £1 because they'd last about 10 minutes and then run out. These were a decent enough price, but not expensive. Oh my God, I can't spend £100 on pens sort of costs. But yeah, I'll be using all the different colors, and if you want to see which colors, I'll be putting them up beside me like so as I go around. If I don't talk all the way through the stream, guys, I will put on a comic historian, but we're not listening to comic historian today. We're listening to what's his name, Comics Explained, which is a brother company sort of thing. I don't know if they're brothers at all, but they're I think they live in the same house. They're very good. He's very good. He explains more of the comic more than reads the comic in a fashion of excitement. This one explains who the Dark Phoenix is, well, he's going to be, who the Dark Phoenix is, who Jean Grey is, and how everybody got all their powers. That's if my TV stays on. Because things just turned itself off. That's not a good thing. I'll have to check that and why that is, but oh no. That's what I get for not charging my controller. So now it's time to leave your comments, guys. What do you think of that version, and do you think you'll be able to draw that yourself? Because if you can, let me know over on Instagram, where I will show off your artwork if you want to have a go for yourself. The picture will be available on Sunday for you guys to check out in full quality, because I know this camera's a little fuzzy and can have its problems. being able to see properly. That's why I sometimes give you a close-up. I give you a close-up on the ink version yesterday, which we did yesterday. Definitely going checking the playlist with that one, guys. There should be some cards if you're watching back, popping up in the right corner. That'll take you to what you need to specifically. So we've got sketching Monday and then inking Tuesday and Wednesday. Today we'll be colouring. Tomorrow we'll be digitizing as always. So don't forget to tune in for that one. But we'll be doing the constructions live, and then the rest will be recorded and released over the weekend, maybe Friday to Saturday, but definitely everything will be out by Sunday.
Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah.
Let's begin.
Okay, so as promised, we are getting into Dark Phoenix in time for the movie's release. So again, like what we talked about in the previous video when we covered the Phoenix saga, is that there are some things that take place between the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas. But the weird thing is that it's kind of hit and miss, right? Like it's the nature of the beast. And so because of that, we're actually going to hit some finer points before, I guess, as we go through this story, or at least the first part of it. And then we'll kind of with the grand poobah events, with the Dark Phoenix and all that kind of good stuff. So initially, really when it comes to the Dark Phoenix saga, this runs between Uncanny X-Men issues 129 and 138. But the brunt of all the stuff really kind of happens in the later bit. And so with this beginning part right here, we initially pick up with like Banshee and Cyclops and Jean, as well as Moira McTaggart. Now, there were a couple of things that went on here, and really a couple of reasons why this is being done the way that it is. So Banshee, as we know, is Sean Cassidy. He basically has the ability to emit kind of a sonic scream, not really on the same level as Black Bolt of the Inhumans. His scream can do anything between shatter rocks and allow him to fly, to shatter mountains and things like that. But it's by no means like planet destroying. But the idea behind this is that really in the couple of issues running up to this, we ended up dealing with a villain named Proteus. Now, Proteus is Kevin McTaggart, who's actually the son of a guy named Joe and Moira McTaggart herself. The way this played out was that Kevin's powers really has the power to manipulate reality, but only on a limited space. So imagine if Franklin Richards of the Fantastic Four, the son of Reed Richards, could only manipulate reality within like a 1 mile.
Sorry, guys. We'll got the music going at least. Well, music. Such. If you have music that you want me to play, I'd love to hear it. So let me know.
Nobody really knew how to handle him. He was essentially kind of locked away from time. Now,
you get link over on Instagram, guys, and I'll go straight to your channel or whatever you've got it on.
Who just had problems with Moira McTaggart, showing up on the doorstep and breaking into their home. And then as soon as that happened, he ended up freeing Proteus by accident. And then Proteus basically took over the guy's body, right? Because when it comes to Kevin, because his powers are so extreme, the human body can't handle them. Now, this is something I want to talk about for a second, because this is not something you really see anymore in Marvel Comics. Back in the 1970s, 80s, and even in the early 90s, you had such a thing as powers that were so extreme that a normal human body couldn't handle them. And this is really a way for a writer to essentially create a villain or hero and then kind of transcend them from the human element and then move them into a much greater thing, right? To basically say they can always make their return. Apocalypse was like that. Proteus was like that. The original X-Men, Nate Gray, was like that. The problem is Marvel never brought him back. And when they did, he basically came back as Jesus in a story arc that no one's reading right now. But with this tidbit here, Proteus is just a character whose powers are wildly extreme. Now, ultimately, because of the fact that he has these sort of energy bonds, more or less, metal disrupts that. And so it eventually came down to Colossus, along with a couple X-Men, who ended up defeating him, and it was believed he was dead. Now, he's not, but at the time this story was being written, it's believed that Proteus was dead. And so what this did is it allowed Chris Claremont to kind of write out Banshee and Moira McTaggart, not in the sense that you'll never see them again, but at the same time this was going on, you had Black Tom Cassidy, who's related to Banshee and was actually raising Teresa, Siren, who's the daughter of Banshee. And so because of that, it kind of allowed Claremont to sort of go into that story arc and keep the two of them somewhat removed.
Like I was saying, guys, we're going to be using these to color in. And they glide so well.
Up to this in terms of what came out of the Phoenix saga and the Dark Phoenix saga. Now,
they saturate in, so like the other pens I was using, they would, they're very wet, but they dry very quickly, like a Copic marker pen.
And then suddenly, Jean Grey is basically psychically assaulted by, not really assaulted, but psychically bombarded by Jason Wingard. Now, Jason Wingard is new here. Jason Wingard has been around for a long, long time. In fact, he was part of Magneto's original Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which faced off against the X-Men in issue number 4, I think it was, by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And so when this happens, Jason Wingard has found success as part of a group called the Hellfire Club. Now, the Hellfire Club exists in two forms. You have the Hellfire Club itself, and then you have the Inner Circle. The actual Hellfire Club is more of a front, right? Like they're just a super wealthy, well-to-do organization. But the inner circle basically exists to just kind of collect power as much as they can, as much power as they can, right? So like they influence governments, they influence companies. The only company they haven't really been able to gain a foothold in, I think, is Rock on Oil. But outside of that, they influence almost everybody. But when it was realized by Emma Frost, who we'll actually pick up with here in a minute.
I'm gonna give you a zone
name.
name.
And possessed an insane amount of power. Then it became we can bend her to our will. And so because Jason Wingard has the power to manipulate the five senses and make you believe that everything that you're seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, and smelling is absolutely real, then what they could do is use him as a means to ensnare Jean Grey. The problem with this is you're talking about a being with the power of a god, right? So it's like if Jason Wingard tried to use his powers on Galactus by himself, it wouldn't work. And so a device was created by Emma Frost that would basically amplify the power of Jason Wingard and would in turn allow him to ensnare Jean. And that's what happens. Now, this is one of the big things that kind of comes out of this, is it's little bit by little bit, right? If he had just like full-on psychically assaulted Jean, then like it wouldn't work, right? Because she would have immediately picked up that something was wrong, and then it would have just, it all would have gone belly up for the Hellfire Club. Instead, it's bit by bit. It's small moment here, small moment there. It's these little glimpses, right? Like these small little moments where Jason Wingard will basically like trick her mind into believing that she's on like a Victorian era ship, and like the two of them are lovers, and like Cyclops is just some goofball who's trying to get in the way, and like that's it. And for her, she believes it's 100% true. Now, there's two forces operating here, right? I mean, there's two forces that are going on here. The first, of course, is Jean herself, who's easily ensnared, but the second is the Phoenix, who could block all that from Jean, but is curious. And so that's why these things really work in conjunction with what it is that Jason Wingard's trying to do. And so again, that's when we start to pick up with like the introduction of Kitty Pryde, which again is kind of a small little thing, and that's the nature of Claremont's story, right? I mean, Kitty Pryde kind of gets introduced here, and she's brought into the X-Men, but that's basically it. It's just kind of like, here's a future member of the team. That's the way Claremont did things, right? Claremont would introduce a character and then give them a huge moment, right? Where Kitty Pryde gets introduced here in like 3 issues.
We got 2 tones there, like I said, they mix together, but they will not bleed into each other unless I really saturate each side, which I might go over later. But I want to just quickly use all this.
Recruited by both Emma Frost as part of the Massachusetts Academy, and then Xavier as part of the School for Gifted Youngsters. Now, with Emma Frost
a little bit of shade.
Academy, that'll eventually become home to the Hellions, which is basically Emma Frost's own variation of like the New Mutants / X-Men, kind of an amalgamation of those. Eventually, all the Hellions will be massacred, and then she'll end up leaving and becoming a good guy. But at the outset here in this moment, she's kind of a rival to a degree to Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, but she's really raising like villains more so than she's like raising heroes, if that makes any sense. But it's just one of the many things that kind of went in the Claremont writing, that like there's a lot of things kind of going on here. And so what this does is it leads to Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club basically going through and capturing the X-Men, and they managed to pull it off quite readily. Now, that's another important thing to bear in mind, is that with the Hellfire Club, they almost never go into anything blind, right? Like they almost never go in having no idea what's going on or how to win. And so with Emma Frost leading the charge as like one of the most powerful telepaths in the world, and depending on what story arc you're reading, sometimes more powerful than Charles Xavier, we saw that in Civil War. The idea behind this is that like using all the information they have on how the X-Men work and how they function, they end up taking Colossus, Storm, and Wolverine. Now, of course, again, this leaves an opening for Kitty Pryde to basically join in and kind of say, hey, look, I can help rescue the X-Men and prove my worth. But again, it's kind of bouncing back and forth here, small little moments here and there, little tidbits. And so getting a bit of a reprieve, this is when things really start to get interesting, is getting a bit of a reprieve and kind of going on and doing a bit to sort of spend time among themselves, as well as investigate what's basically the Hellfire Club. You end up having Jean Grey and Scott Summers who go to a local bar, or a local disco, as it's called, which is actually the headline of the act is Dazzle, which is kind of interesting. She can manipulate light, basically. But with the two of them going through there, of course, they're immediately bombarded by Jason Wingard, at least Jean is. And so with this kind of going down, this whole scenario plays out where like Jason Wingard shows up and says, hey, like, we remember each other. We were lovers, all that kind of good stuff. And kind of, again, being teleported back to the moment. Jean Grey just sort of says, yeah, like, I mean, I remember you. We're definitely lovers. And the two of them actually end up getting married. And she basically kind of goes forward as what seems to sort of be this villainous version of herself, or at least Jason Wingard kind of pulls her in and sends her that direction. Now, that's the motivation of Wingard, right? I mean, we kind of haven't made that clear at this moment. That's the motivation of Wingard. That in the mind of Jason, everybody kind of has the devil inside them, right? It's the aspect of themselves that's looking to cut loose and just sort of break all the rules, right? I mean, it's bad boys and bad girls. They kind of realize that some rules can be bent, others can be broken, to quote the Matrix. With this being the case, with Jason Wingard playing on Jean, what he's looking to do is unlock the darker side of it, right? The part that just kind of wants to spin out and just do whatever it is that she wants to do, because then what the Hellfire Club can do is indulge those desires, which, to create, havoc and to tear down worlds, whatever it is they want to do. They can use her as a means to kind of take over the world, more or less. The problem with this is that, again, where she's having a mental flashback, keep in mind that it's only her mind that's experiencing this. She's not physically being transported into the past to a Victorian era landscape. And so in this moment where Jason Wyngarde's there and he goes to kiss Jean, she does it in front of Cyclops. And that's when Cyclops begins to realize, okay, something's actually wrong here. Now, of course, Cyclops doesn't necessarily bail out on her, although he's very close to doing it. But at the time that all begins to happen, of course, the Hellfire Club makes their move, attacking Jean, attacking Cyclops, and Dazzler as well. Now, again, Dazzler's instruction here is just kind of, hey, look, I can manipulate lights and stuff like that. I don't know that I'm a mutant. They basically, Cyclops says, yes, you are, and you have these powers. You should come hang out with us, and so on and so forth. It all kind of wraps up pretty fast, right? Like it's not super intense. But again, focusing on Jean, focusing on the Hellfire Club, that's when they begin to kind of ask the question, okay, what's going on here? Like what's happening with Jean? And it's kind of interesting because Jean doesn't necessarily tell Cyclops what's going on. And that's kind of interesting here, right? Because what Jean is experiencing is what's essentially an affair, right? I mean, like what kind of goes on here is actually almost what went on, or almost identical to what went on with Grant Morrison's new X-Men, right? Where like Cyclops engages in a psychic affair with Emma Frost, and the two of them actually sleep together in Cyclops' mind, and Jean Grey kind of walks in. But in this particular situation, she's not telling me. Like she's not like, yeah, there's this guy who's like psychically assaulting my mind and like tricking me into believing that I'm in like, a Victorian era landscape or something like that. Because not even Jean fully realizes what she's going on. And there's actually kind of an emotional attack there, right? Like what Jean's basically doing is she spent her whole life with like the Boy Scout, right? The guy who never breaks the rules, always does the right thing, so on and so forth. And that's cool, I guess. But then now she's basically got kind of like this bad boy in her life, right? Like I can take you away from like this boring life that you live and bring you into something better. And she kind of wants to take it. But again, it's one part Jean who's sort of swept up in this emotional turmoil, and then it's the Phoenix that's sort of feeding on it, right? So even if Jean wanted to walk away, she probably couldn't. Now, of course, you've also got Emma Frost, who's basically defeating, who's captured the other X-Men, and then you've got Kitty Pryde, who kind of sneaks in and basically frees like Wolverine, which in turn goes through and allows Wolverine to free everybody else, and then you have the rest of the X-Men who arrive on the scene, all of whom end up doing battle with Emma Frost. But this is kind of cool because this is really where Jean begins to shift. Right? This is where she begins to move away from the superhero that we knew her as and starts to kind of lightly indulge in her darker side, which basically confirms to Jason Wyngarde that what he's doing is right. She ends up getting into a psychic battle of sorts with Emma Frost. And where the other X-Men are freeing each other and they're trying to make their escape and so on and so forth, Jean actually kind of all out assaults Emma and almost like destroys her mind in the process. Now, under normal circumstances and coming out of the Phoenix Saga, when that event ended and Jean realized the full totality of the power she possessed and what she could do with it, she put these blocks in place, right? She's like, okay, there's a huge amount of power here, but I'm going to restrain myself so that I never lose control, because if I do, God only knows what could happen. I could wipe out the Earth and the entire solar system, presumably the entire galaxy. I'm in possession of an infinite source of power from like across the omniverse. So like I can't just let things go and do whatever it is that I want to do. But in this moment, in this fight with Emma, Jean doesn't care. She just lets loose. And when that happens, like it almost completely eradicates and kills Emma Frost. And that's one of the things that Cyclops picks up on. He starts talking to Storm and he's like, hey, look, I don't know if you noticed, but like with Jean Grey, she is pretty dangerous now. Like she's really kind of snapping and losing control, and we have to be aware of what's going on. And so in response to this, and really kind of as a follow-up, the X-Men begin investigating the Hellfire Club. Right? They kind of go in there and say, okay, we have to figure out what's happening. And it's kind of a funny moment here, right? Because like as soon as they get in there, Jason Wyngarde strikes again. And when that happens, like Jean Grey is totally ensnared, right? Like it's the last fig leaf, right? It's the last thing. Jean Grey is now no longer in a mindset where she's in love with Cyclops. She's totally ensnared by Jason Wyngarde. Now she sees Jason Wyngarde as he wants to be seen. And so when he ends up leading her away, it's kind of crazy because like he ends up taking her upstairs. And it's like, okay, Cyclops, so like some guy basically just like grabbed your girl and she's going upstairs with him. Now you got one of two choices, man. You can be a punk and just be like, well, I mean, I guess she really likes him. Or you can go up there and get your girl. And that's exactly what you need to do, man. You're going to let another man walk off with your woman. Then you didn't deserve to have her in the first place, man. You got to fight for the things you love, folks. Sometimes you get beat up. Sometimes you get a black eye. Sometimes you get all kinds of messed up. But you just fight for the things that you care for. Fight for the things that matter to you. And Cyclops does. The problem is that Cyclops is a punk. No, he's not. But actually, the problem is that Cyclops is facing the power of a god. That's the problem the Cyclops has. And so like when he goes running up on Jean, she completely blasts him with like a huge portion of the Phoenix's energy. Now, not enough to kill him, right? But like at this moment, it's when the rest of the Hellfire Club make their move, right? Because the X-Men respond, the Hellfire Club responds back. And that's when we start to get like these really cool explanations on what the various members can do. So beginning with Sebastian Shaw. Sebastian Shaw is a guy who can essentially absorb an unlimited amount of energy, kinetic, or I guess, really any kind of energy, and then like channel it into like physical strength, right? So for those of you guys who remember Nox from Heroes, the Black Guy, think of him, except instead of fear, he can absorb just like, physical energy, right? So like physical punches, blasts that aren't powerful enough to like destroy his physical body, and it turns into physical strength. It amps him up. And so really it's very difficult to destroy. And it would take somebody with an extreme level of power to destroy Sebastian Shaw. Again, it's only physical strength. So like what you saw in X-Men First Class, I think it was, with Kevin Bacon, Sebastian Shaw, that was just Fox screwing things up, which they're really known for doing. But what you also have here is you've got a guy by the name of Donald Pierce. Now, a lot of you guys know the name from the Logan film, the guy who was basically responsible, or at least had a hand in creating like X-23, and who was chasing after her and Wolverine and so on. Donald Pierce eventually goes on to join the Reavers, but what none of the members of the Hellfire Club know right now is that while Donald Pierce is part of the Hellfire Club and they are essentially mutants, Donald Pierce hates mutants, and he's actually using the Hellfire Club as a means to try to like push his own agenda, acquire power unto himself, so he can launch a campaign to kill mutants wherever he can find them. Now, of course, ultimately it doesn't work, and Donald Pierce, being half machine, is cast out and then eventually joins the Reavers, where he's really been ever since. Those of you guys who are reading the current X-Men run, that's really where
I used the wrong red.
But then you also have Harry Leland. And I always felt like Harry Leland was one of the most underestimated members of the Hellfire Club, if not one of the most underestimated characters in Marvel, right? Like, he was so cool. And
what I'll do,
Claremont really
add a little bit of this instead.
So what Harry Leland can do is he can
shading,
increase the mass or decrease the mass.
Not too much though. Looks like very dark.
He can make Wolverine weigh tons, right? So he's like Graviton to a degree, but he can make Wolverine weigh tons, right? So like, Harry Leland against the Incredible Hulk, depending on what happens, you might see it play out the exact same way you saw Graviton and the Incredible Hulk face off against each other in the Avengers cartoon show, right? Where like Graviton just starts increasing the gravitational pull around the Incredible Hulk. Instead, what Leland does is he would increase the Hulk's mass, right? So if Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk and he weighs 600 pounds, Leland can come along and say, actually, you weigh 5,000 pounds now, and just increases his mass to an extreme degree, which would actually be kind of a cool fight. But you guys understand why Leland was painfully underestimated in Marvel, and he was painfully underused. It was terrible. He would make such a great character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like, imagine the characters of the MCU all end up showing up to the Hellfire Club, and like suddenly none of them can move, and like they all weigh thousands of pounds. They weigh so much that actually they begin to just kind of crush under their own weight. That's what Leland can do. Like, that's why he's so awesome. But again, the X-Men are pretty much taken apart quick, fast, and in a hurry by the Hellfire Club. The only exception is Wolverine. This is something I want you guys to notice too, because this is the cool thing about Claremont writing, is that when Wolverine fights Leland, he's basically just like made to weigh a ton of weight and then starts crashing through the building down into the sewer systems, and then Leland walks away. That's the way Claremont would do things, and that's cool because you don't see that in story arcs now, right? Like, Wolverine would show back up again and fight Leland, and then like they would win all in the same story. Claremont actually extends that to the next issue and says, okay, so like Wolverine's defeated right now, but like he's gonna come back, and Wolverine by himself is gonna go rescue Jean Grey. Now, at the outset, and just kind of looking at this, it's just kind of like, okay, so Wolverine's fighting by himself, whatever, but Wolverine's fighting for love, and that's one of the cool things that Claremont had built up. That's one of the reasons why his writing always paid off, is because with Wolverine basically going back and intending to like rescue his friends in the X-Men, that he's doing it because he's in love with Jean, painfully in love with her, right? I mean, it's kind of the love triangle between himself and Cyclops and Jean Grey. So he's going there mainly to rescue her, but to also rescue the other members of the X-Men. Now, the other part of this is that it really kind of shows this perception of Jean in terms of how it's viewed from the mind of Jason, or from her mind by virtue of Jason Wingard. Is that where the X-Men are just kind of tied up and they have these inhibitor belts around them and they can't use their powers or anything like that, and they're standing in like a modern day room, and the perception of Jean's mind, they're criminals. That they're basically, people that tried to break in, they tried to take what belonged to her, and they have to be dealt with, and so on and so forth. Her whole vision is skewed. And again, that's the nature of Jason Wingard. Now, a person who's a telepath like Charles Xavier, or a person like Jean Grey, who wouldn't be in such a fractured mindset right now, would normally be able to oversee this, would normally be able to like realize what's going on. Now, if this was like Charles Xavier, and Charles Xavier walked in on this, he would be like, what is going on here? He would use his powers and be like, Jean, you have to see, this is the way, it's not really the way things are. And that would basically basically the end. But with Jean Grey's mind being fractured, with like the Phoenix really sort of just like absorbing and taking in all these emotional feelings, Jean Grey never had a chance. And so that's kind of the cool thing, is because in this moment, in this fraction of a second where she's basically almost totally ensnared by Jason Wyngarde, this fraction of herself, this tiny itty bitty version of herself, which is still kind of maintaining this psychic connection with Cyclops, manages to send a signal to his brain and say, hey, like, I'm still here. I can't do anything. I'm totally ensnared. Like, there's nothing I can really do here. I'm almost totally ensnared. I can't escape from this, but you can. And in that moment, what ends up happening is the lock or whatever it is on Cyclops' neck essentially snaps. Now, this is kind of the cool thing about that, is that when it snaps and when it breaks, it essentially frees Cyclops, right? Like it basically allows Cyclops to go free. But this is the important thing, and this is why this happens. And it's one of the most important moments throughout the entirety of the story. With Cyclops being held captive, Jean Grey for the most part doesn't care, because it's just, this is a guy that's there. It doesn't really matter. But remember, ever since the two of them first met, and really Claremont built on this, is that there's a kind of psychic bond.
Build up the layers.
Cyclops that nobody else has. So, like, no matter what happens,
more layers you put on, darker it goes.
Look,
guys.
What's going on with the other person is really kind of forged in their love, right? Like,
so you're
always know
shading with the same color.
Jean Grey doesn't even have to use her powers to know. She doesn't have to use her powers to know there's something wrong with Cyclops. The connection really kind of tells her the psychic bond weakens, or like it begins to kind of fracture a little bit when he starts to get distant. That's when we kind of know that things are wrong, that something's not working the way it's supposed to. And so, with this little bit of a moment happening, the reason why this works out for Cyclops, the reason why the lock on his neck snaps and so on, is because with the Phoenix incapacitating Cyclops, and with him fighting against Jason Wyngarde and then presumably being killed, or at least Jason Wyngarde using his powers to make Jean believe that Cyclops has been killed, this is the breaking point. Because what Jean Grey's experiencing now is basically the feeling of loss. Losing the best thing she ever knew, the one man she's in love with among every other man in existence. The Phoenix has never felt this before. The Phoenix doesn't know what it's like to experience the loss of a loved one, someone you're hopelessly in love with. The Phoenix has never experienced that. There's a lot of emotions the Phoenix hasn't experienced, at least at the time this story was written. Now, future stories came later on down the line. They kind of went back and changed a lot of this by introducing new things, right? Like the Phoenix was in love with Odin, and
that's where we are so far, guys.
This story's
a little bit more colouring, and I want a bit shading with the different colours that I've got here as well. I might use some purples in there. Everyone uses this one, but that's very dark, so I don't know what I'm really doing just yet. So I'm gonna have a quick look, let all that dry, and have a think.
Cyclops dies. The Phoenix feels the power of losing someone she loves, and the Phoenix snaps. She just loses her mind. Like she literally breaks. And that's when all hell begins to break loose. Because as soon as that happens, the Phoenix immediately turns on Jason Wyngarde and says, like, I see what you've been doing now. Like, I get this ruse that you've been playing. You've been manipulating me. You've been lying to me. You've been cheating me. Like, you've been tricking me into seeing things that aren't really there. So if what you want, Jason Wyngarde, is to experience the power of a god, then I will give it to you in its full totality. And so the Dark Phoenix runs up on Jason Wyngarde and basically gives him cosmic awareness. In the blink of an eye, he sees the entirety of all things in existence, all throughout the infinite expanse of all space and time. He sees it all at once. And because he's not prepared for it, it's totally overwhelming. Now, here's the important thing to bear in mind here, is people will look at that and they'll say, yeah, but like Quasar Wendell Vaughn got that and it wasn't overwhelming, and like Viola Bell, she became like the new Quasar and that wasn't overwhelming. Captain Marvel got that and it wasn't overwhelming. Well, because Marvel's usually very particular about who gets it, right? So it's usually like a slow build up to experiencing that kind of level of like cosmic awareness and being aware of what's going on in all things at the same time. Either that or it's someone who kind of like eases them into it, right? Like when Wendell Vaughn got that, he was eased into it by the cosmic entity Eon, right? He was just kind of like, okay, well, like, just so you know, what you're about to see is going to be some crazy stuff. So just like breathe and like everything will be okay. But like, you're about to see the whole universe. Bang, and then we just like throw it on. But for this situation, Jason Wyngarde has never experienced anything like that. So he's blasted with all existence at the same time, which overwhelms him and actually sends him into a catatonic state where he will remain for quite some time. And so in the moment, kind of in the aftermath of this, the rest of the X-Men basically band together. They manage to make their escape from the Hellfire Club. Everything seems okay. And then the Dark Phoenix manifests. The Dark Phoenix is totally overwhelmed by everything she's been experiencing. And it says, like, Jean Grey is gone now. There is no Jean Grey. There's none of that stuff. I am the Dark Phoenix, and all of you are going to die. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Report. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. And yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.
Peace. So, as that comes to an end, we shall see what we've done. We've got still got to add a load more colour in there. Skin tone, still don't have a skin tone colour. The skin tone colour is, well, meant to be, but it's not that great. It's a bit too brown for Caucasian. As you can see here, Jean Grey, I mean, I could use this colour as a darker colour. I think I actually did that on here, in fact. Yeah, I did. Like I did there. I can use it, if you see what I mean there, if I was just to put it there. That's already quite dark. So, I shall have to have a thunk. So I can use this as a... I actually kind of like that. I'll put that everywhere now. Again, guys, it's all adding layers, adding layers. You think, oh, you know, that could go on top of that. That could go on top of that. And I found another colour that can go on top of that. Still doesn't help with the skin tones. I suppose I could put this as a darker thing, actually. Maybe up in the hand, see what the hand does. Yeah, it's only going to be good for like slight bits. Nothing major. I better stop doing it on that face. Acts well as a thing, but not a full color. I'm gonna put that away because I didn't do that on there. I left it all white, but I've added a quick added a bit of pink. Actually, I'll use that pink there. And added a little pink on the face just to accentuate it that she was glowing, but not completely. So what I'm going to do now is add dashes of pink here. I'm trying to go for a glowy effect. Too much. Again, I like my fluorescence. I'm going to give it too much pink. It will look stupid. The way I want it to get going. Too much pink. There's already a lot of red in there. Forgot about the belly. We'll see what I'll do in a moment. This will just be the base color. Which I should have done the face first, but I went over too much with the other color, which is this. Start adding. And I want to give it a, like she's glowing from her own skin kind of look. Still need to do the hair. Let's do the hair in a big yeah. Ooh. I'm having a thought. Having a thought. A phoenix flame. I'll put some orange in there in a moment. I really want to accentuate the flame aspect of this picture as well. Trying to make her hair like a flame effect. Alright, go in with that. I'll give her a darker outline because I've got to do the phoenix. As you can see, there's a shadow up around. I'm going to use that as background when I go digitizing. Still need to do that sash. Going to do these trousers as well. So let's put in the orange that I want to put in there. Just put it where it needs to be, like a flames. Sort of her head's the base flame. So go something like, we don't want it too much. So something in the middle of it, stripy lines. And they give a sort of a flame effect. Okay, so we're not looking too badly. Bad, whatever. Don't need that red anymore. I'm going to go into the trousers again. I don't know what colour to put that sash is. What do you think? Add a little bit of shading here. More so than we already had. Because she's going to be so glowy, with the flames and such, we can actually put in quite a bit of shading. It will all enhance what's going to be there. And as this dries in, it'll soak in nicely. And I might be able to go over it again with a little bit more. Again, you can't see fully. It's very glowy what you can see, which is kind of nice, because then you'll see the glow act before I do, really. I don't know if I should put the sash in as purple. What do you think? Should I do that? Let me know in the comment section. And if I've already done it and you're watching back, do you think I should have done something, whatever I'm going to do next? Could be a pink, I suppose. Or purple. Way too dark. All right. Done. Don't have a. Oh, let's see what I've got my other pens. Maybe I have a good purple. That's the kind of purple I was looking for. And from the pens I've told you about earlier on, it's kind of, yeah, we like that one. It's a bit dark, but it will dry lighter. I bloody hope. Is it too late now? Too late now. We'll use this as a darker then. So we'll have this here. And then we'll go over it again with another color, I think. So I'll have 3 colors, maybe 4 colors, just on one piece. Just for shading purposes and showing the difference in the color. As I was saying to you earlier, some of these pens work, some of these pens do not. And that one's one of those that does. So we'll keep that one. We'll be using my fluorescent yellow as well, guys, in a moment, just to give you the same effect as we've got on here. Do I go all the way around it? And then start putting the colour in, darker colour in. Just trying to think what else. What other colour I can put on? Yeah, that's a purple. Yeah, that's all right. Actually, a lot lighter. I should have used that first. It's a lot lighter. I can blend them in. Oh no, I can't because I'm using the same bloody pens. Can't blend with these pens. The other pens I used before are these little small stick ones. Double-sided sticks. They don't blend very well. They tend to bleed into each other instead. So you put like a splot down. It's going to go off and bloody colour in bloody purple then. You've got to put a splot down. Oh, that's what we're going to do. Just going to put it there. Like that. Shading, but shading. Sounds weird saying shading because I'm using a different color, but it's just a darker shade. Just a darker shade. Right, let's see if I've got anything else to listen to.
Hey, we have a city to burn. Every corporal cop city is gonna be.
Be sure to check out
Cyberpunk.
Rob Plays. There you can hang out with me while we play video games and talk about life stuff. So continuing our discussion on Jean Grey, with the last video establishing her character's publication history as being lackluster, and that she was routinely shown to have been the X-Men's weakest member, constantly requiring the efforts of her teammates in both training simulations and real-world conflicts, after taking over the series with Uncanny X-Men issue number 94, because Claremont looked to the X-Men lineup as a series that could expand the motives and ideologies of individual members, Jean Grey was used as an experimental platform in an effort to bolster her status within both the X-Men team proper and the Marvel Universe as a whole. To this end, with X-Men issue number 98 going into issue number 101, Claremont orchestrated his reinvention of Jean within the pages of the prelude to the Phoenix Saga, centering on the introduction of Stephen Lang as an anti-mutant fanatic who had been assigned the Sentinel Project following the defeat of Bolivar Trask. During the climax of the three-part story, a handful of the original X-Men had been kidnapped by Lang and taken to a satellite orbiting the Earth, during which time Cyclops, Jean, and the remaining members of the team launched a rescue mission. Coming into conflict with both the traditional Sentinels as well as a new model designed to mimic the original X-Men team in both appearance and abilities, where the X-Men themselves were successful in defeating Lang during their journey back to Earth, the group was bombarded with cosmic radiation, incapacitating all the other members and piloting the shuttle back herself. During its re-entry, and while succumbing to the lethal effects of radiation, Jean had telepathically reached out to the Phoenix Force, which in turn offered a pact of sorts. As it was explained, Jean was quite literally walking the line between life and death, and that if she had survived and been allowed to return to Earth, she likely would have fallen into a catatonic state, due in part to her mind's inability to cope with the pain that she was experiencing, as well as the shock of nearly dying. Offering to bond itself with Jean, the original intention of Claremont was to have her character go forward as a wholly new being with her abilities of telepathy and telekinesis enhanced to cosmic levels. Accepting the entity's offer and arriving back on Earth, after the shuttle had landed, Jean emerged from the water, declaring herself to have been reborn as the Phoenix. Using this as a jumping-off platform, with issue number 101, Claremont began to both expand on the X-Men's place within the Marvel cosmos, as well as introduce a host of new concepts on the cosmic level, but largely confined to the X-Men as a team. With its first piece coming to fruition as the Shi'ar, where their empire existed as an amalgamation of various races coming together and swearing allegiance to the Imperial Crown, Claremont also established that the Shi'ar functioned to ensure the safety of the Emcron crystal, a physical stone operating as the nexus point for all realities of the multiverse. However, with the Shi'ar ruler Dekin losing his sanity and developing a lust for power, his younger sister Lalandra had come to the conclusion that Dekin looked to secure the powers of the Emcron crystal to not only rule the universe, but take over all other realities as well. Making contact with Charles Xavier and the X-Men owing to the fact that the Earth had some of the most powerful beings in the universe, because the Phoenix Force was a protector of life and tied directly to the crystal itself, the Phoenix Saga unfolded and concluded with Jean and the X-Men joining forces with the Shi'ar, the newly introduced Starjammers led by Cyclops' father, and a host of other beings, all of whom battled the forces of Dekin. Culminating in the Emcron crystal cracking, Claremont added a bit of history to the Marvel Universe and stating that if the Imcron crystal were to shatter entirely, the multiverse itself would end, after which the crystal would reform and initiate a recreation of all things. While this bit of storytelling would become a cornerstone of Marvel Comics and remain part of future stories, which would reveal that the Earth 616 universe was actually the seventh incarnation as a result of the previous multiverse's destruction, leading into the birth of Galactus, in terms of the main event, the Phoenix Saga proper saw the Imcron crystal cracked by the Kin and healed by the Phoenix, resulting in the multiverse being saved and the X-Men returning to Earth. Using this to beef up the team's individual stories as well as wrap around to the conclusion of the Phoenix epic, were the events between the conclusion of the Phoenix Saga and Uncanny X-Men issue number 108 and the beginning of the Dark Phoenix Saga and Uncanny X-Men issue number 192 saw Cyclops spending time with his father and a love triangle forming between Jean, Scott, and Wolverine. Claremont began to set the stage for its finale by introducing the international clandestine organization called the Hellfire Club. Originally led by Sebastian Shaw and composed of Emma Frost, Donald Pierce, Harry Leland, and tentative initiate Jason Wingard, the Hellfire Club operated behind the scenes, manipulated the financial and political sector to both remain hidden and assure the success of their plans to dominate the world. Taking notice of Jean Grey due to Emma Frost's Omega-level telepathic powers and viewing Jean as a potential member who could be used to further their schemes, Jason Wingard was tasked with manipulating her five senses, stealing Jean away from the X-Men, and inducting her into their ranks as proof of his capabilities in being an asset. However, with the conclusion of the Phoenix Saga seeing Jean give herself fully to the entity, as well as Phoenix itself having never experienced the full range of human emotions, the manipulations of Jason Wingard exposed the Phoenix Force to a multitude of concepts, including lust, rage, envy, and revenge. Becoming enthralled and overwhelmed, the goal of Chris Claremont came to its fruition in that where the Phoenix Saga represented rebirth, the Dark Phoenix Saga intended to represent corruption and fall from grace. Losing all sense of sanity and stepping into the role of a villain, after overpowering the mind of Jason Wingard and sending him into a catatonic state, Jean took to the universe, consuming a sun and destroying its solar system, killing an entire culture in the process. Drawing the attention of the Shi'ar who viewed the rogue entity as a threat to the universe itself, the Dark Phoenix Saga reached its climax when the X-Men suppressed the power of the Phoenix Force and invoked the Shi'ar's tradition of trial by combat, facing off against the Imperial Guard. With the X-Men being overwhelmed entirely and the Phoenix Force breaking loose, Colossus was able to launch an attack, assaulting Jean and restoring her sanity temporarily, during which time she informed Cyclops that the only way to spare his life and the lives of the team was to sacrifice herself. Activating a Kree weapon left behind after their experiments on the humans, Jean was atomized completely and erased from existence. That said, where Claremont had intended for the Dark Phoenix Saga to conclude with Jean being depowered, leaving the X-Men and forming a family with Cyclops, because the comics code was still a major part of the industry, albeit with more and more publishers ignoring the rules, the idea of punishment for evil deeds was still a major concept which could not be ignored. This, combined with the strict editorial policies of Jim Shooter as editor-in-chief, resulted in the death of Jean and Cyclops abandoning the team. Intending to carry out his ending as he envisioned, Chris Claremont introduced Madeline Pryor, a woman who was for all intents and purposes identical to Jean in terms of memories and physical appearance. Using the emotional state of Scott Summers as a means to bring the two together and bear a child who would go on to become Cable, the other half of this equation came in the form of both fan feedback and continued editorial mandates from Shooter. Covered in a 2012 article by the Austin Chronicle titled Chris Claremont, Dead Should Mean Dead, because the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas were so well received, these stories combined with the overall works of Claremont had catapulted the X-Men team to the front of Marvel's lineup, outselling all other titles by a margin of 3-1. Looking to capitalize on fan demand by launching a new series titled X Factor under the writing of Louise Simonson, Jim Shooter looked to see Jean Grey return to the landscape while also ensuring the continuity of her character. Considered to be one of the most controversial retcons in the history of comics, Claremont's hand was essentially forced, requiring him to establish that after having reached out to the Phoenix Force while piloting the shuttle back to Earth, Jean's physical body was placed in stasis at the bottom of Jamaica Bay, while the Phoenix took on her form and acted in her stead. As a result, the events of the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas had their values stripped away, in that Jean herself had not risen to prominence and fallen from grace, and instead, the events themselves were entirely in the hand of the Phoenix Force. To this end, fans had found themselves absolutely livid and feeling betrayed, believing that their journey with Jean Grey was all for nothing. While this didn't directly affect the sales of the X-Men title, owing in part to Claremont's writing style and the fact that fans still had a host of other characters who were relatable and enjoyable, this retcon, among other issues, led to a continued dislike of Jim Shooter as Marvel's editor-in-chief. That being said, Because the landscape was set for Jean to return in X Factor issue number 1, Madeline Pryor was not written out of the picture so much as she remained in the background. Leading into the events of Cable's timeline and the future of Earth as it was ruled by Apocalypse, while you can learn this information in my video about Cable himself, Jean, Cyclops, Angel, Iceman, and Beast maintained their own X Factor title under the writing of Louise Simonson, routinely crossing over with the X-Men team. During this time, Louise Simonson began to flesh out the backstory of Jean even further, focusing on her sister, the rise in anti-mutant sentiments, the idea of Cyclops producing a son with Madeline, and the introduction of Rachel Summers as the time-displaced daughter of Scott and Jean from the Days of Future Past, all of which was written in a manner that depicted Jean catching up on everything she had missed. With the stories of Louise Simonson receiving critical acclaim for their depth and focus, some of which rivaled the works of Claremont, the continued rise of the X-Men popularity saw a wholesale reformation of both X Factor and X-Men. Taking place in 1991 with X-Men Volume 2, Issue Number 1, both teams were merged into a singular group but split into two factions, referred to as the Gold and Blue teams. Initially coming under the control of Chris Claremont as writer and Jim Lee as artist, both of whom had vacated their positions within Marvel Comics by issue number 20, this time period saw a paradigm shift to dark and high-octane stories following the success of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. Remaining within the pages of Uncanny X-Men under the writing of John Byrne and later by Scott Lobdell, in truth, Jean's time in the post-Claremont era saw her taking a back seat amidst the surge of X-Men universe expansions, including the former New Mutants now operating as X-Force, the introduction of Psylocke, and Marvel Presents Weapon X, detailing the story of Wolverine. While events like the Onslaught saga and Jean learning of Charles' hidden love affair for her, as well as the marriage of Scott and Jean in 1994's Uncanny X-Men issue number 308, stand out as important parts of her character, on the whole, the damage of the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas continued to linger, and that while she wasn't reviled by fans, the magic had essentially been lost. As a result, Jean found herself falling rank and file with the rest of the team, going into June of 2001 with the launch of New X-Men. Orchestrated by editor-in-chief Joe Quesada and written by Grant Morrison in an effort to beef up the failing title, following the near collapse of the comic book industry in the late 1990s, the style of Morrison took a more liberal approach, focusing on the team assuming the roles of teachers to a new generation of mutants at the Xavier Institute, while dealing with their own personal issues, relationships, and dealing with the newly emerging pro- and anti-mutant political sentiments. At the same time, this series also saw the return of Jean's telekinesis, a re-emergence of her ability to tap into the powers of the Phoenix Force, her assumption of the duties as headmistress of the Xavier Institute, and the failing of her marriage to Cyclops following a psychic affair with Emma Frost. Remaining on as writer for 41 issues, during his 4-year run, Morrison blended the writing style of Claremont with his own, focusing on the individual members but also casting aside virtually all classic villains, and instead introducing new individuals like Cassandra Nova alongside her massacre of 16 million mutants on the island of Genosha. Considered one of the best runs, if not a bit polarizing to fans of more traditional stories, with the exception of Jean's reaction to Scott's psychic affair with Emma Frost and her death at the hands of Magneto masquerading as Zorn, on the whole, she remained a backseat character, fighting various villains and instructing a new age of mutants with all manner of appearances. While Morrison's time concluded with the story Here Comes Tomorrow depicting an alternate reality where Cyclops chose not to run the Xavier Institute alongside Emma following the death of Jean, the story of Morrison, like nearly all of his writings, was left to the interpretation of the reader, much to the chagrin of existing fans who sought closure to his time on the title. Revisiting these concepts during his time as writer of New X-Men following Morrison's departure, writer Chuck Austin established Jean as having stepped into the role of the White Phoenix of the Crown, existing in an ambiguous manner described as performing surgery on the universe, using her powers to reach back in time and influence Scott into running the school alongside Emma and preventing the Here Comes Tomorrow timeline. Having said that, while Morrison's run did contain a finite conclusion, the issue faced by fans was that there had been a 150-year gap between the death of Jean at the hands of Zorn and her re-emergence as the White Phoenix of the Crown during the events of Here Comes Tomorrow. As a result, readers were largely left scratching their heads owing to the fact that Chuck Austin's work treated the concept as if it had already existed, as well as feeling a little irritated at the idea that Jean had not received a proper send-off. Looking to fill the holes left by the Morrison-Austin confusion, as well as the mess that came with the X-Men Reloaded initiative, which focused on relaunching and rebranding the X-Men-related titles, in 2005, under the writing of Greg Pak, Phoenix Endsong returned to the concept of Jean's death and her relation to the White Phoenix of the Crown. Centering on the Shi'ar Empire resurrecting the Phoenix, which in turn resurrected Jean Grey, In an effort to prevent the Phoenix Force from seizing control of her and leading to a second incarnation of the Dark Phoenix, Jean had sought to have Wolverine kill her and confine her body in ice, both of which proved to be unsuccessful. Depicting the Phoenix as a self-aware cosmic entity which looked to return to its darker nature and continue experiencing human emotions, after merging with Jean, who succeeded in taking control of the Phoenix, the story ended with the now iconic scene of Jean offering her goodbyes to Scott, providing one of only a handful of instances where the Marvelous killed a character without bringing him back. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and the next discussion we had about Jean Grey will be all new, all different Jean, and we'll actually tie into the events of Civil War and what it means with Jean Grey appearing in the story. But with that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.
Okay, guys. Well, as he said, peace. We have come to the end of this week's video, this week's paper version of the week. Hopefully, I've done okay. This was the original version that I've basically copied from and taken a few ideas and changed a few things up. Hopefully, you can see all the changes that I've made. But I have used the pen idea as the same thing. So say that was like the original Jean Grey. She was just using her powers at low capacity, and then the Phoenix Force takes over and she begins to take destruction into her own hands, if you like. There's my version. There's that version. I did color that one in, and as you've just seen, I just colored this one in too. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Hopefully you've learned a little bit by the different shades that I've put in. Again, what I've done with the shading is I added a few different colors. I added one color first, and then over the top I added a little bit darker, and in the places that I couldn't add a darker color, I just went over with the pen again and again and again to add more layers and saturate that part a bit more with that color. Hopefully you can notice the techniques with the different things. With the flame as well, I added a fluorescent yellow, and then I started on top of that with a orange, and then a slightly darker coat of like a gold color. Same color I used for the boots and I used for the gauntlets there. Hopefully you like the fire effect in the hair, and you want to tune in when I digitize this one, guys, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Because when I digitize this, that means I can use digital tools. I can use a lot more things to add the flame effect. So don't forget to tune in for that, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. I've been Blut084, BLUT084. Thanks for voting over on Instagram, and don't forget to tune in for some more during the week. Bye for now.